My name is Ava, and I'm 22 years old. If you'd asked me a year ago where I'd be today, I never would have pictured myself settling into my uncle's countryside home. Yet here I am, trying to find my footing in a life that feels both familiar and entirely new. Growing up, stability was a distant dream. My parents' divorce when I was just 10 turned our world upside down. I went from living in a cozy suburban house full of laughter to bouncing between my mother's cramped apartment and my father's new city life. Each move meant learning new streets, new schools, new routines, and slowly I began to dread the word home. By the time I finished high school, I was desperate for something and someone steady. Art had always been my escape, sketching late into the night, imagining worlds I could control when real life felt too unpredictable. When I won a small scholarship to study graphic design, I thought I'd finally caught a break. My mother was scheduled for a multi-month project overseas, and I still had 2 years of college ahead. I needed a safe place to focus on my art and my studies. That's when Uncle Nathan stepped in. More than just my mother's younger brother, Nathan had always been my champion, helping me learn to ride a bike on Sunday mornings, cheering at my first art show, and even gifting me a battered but beloved old car when I turned 18. When I called him in tears, terrified of the thought of living alone in a tiny studio apartment, he didn't hesitate. "You're always welcome here," he said. "This house has room for you, and for your sketches." So I packed my life into 2 suitcases and drove out of the city, past winding roads and sprawling fields, until I reached the white clapboard house where Nathan lives with his wife, Victoria. Their home is painted in the gentle hues of early morning light: cream walls, sage curtains, and a wildflower garden that Victoria tends like a sacred ritual. Inside, the air smells of fresh linen and homemade bread. At first, I felt like an intruder. My room was a cozy nook at the far end of a long hallway, furnished with a daybed, a small desk, and an easel where I set up my drawing materials. I tiptoed through their routines: Nathan's habit of brewing coffee at dawn, Victoria's habit of humming as she chopped vegetables for dinner. I tried not to get in the way, but mostly I worried that I was imposing on their quiet rhythm. Over the weeks, though, a gentle warmth grew between us. Victoria shared her secret for perfect pie crusts and invited me to join her Saturday morning yoga sessions on the porch. She told me stories about growing up in this same countryside town, how she and Nathan first met at a county fair, and what it felt like to find a steady partnership in a world full of unexpected turns. Her kindness soothed the knot of loneliness I'd carried for years. Nathan, for his part, remained my steadfast mentor. He'd peek into my studio corner, nod at my sketches, and occasionally challenge me with a new design problem. "How would you illustrate the sense of home?" Or, "Can you capture the smell of rain?" His questions pushed me to deepen my art beyond pretty pictures, to breathe life and emotion into every line. One crisp autumn afternoon, I found myself on the back porch, sketchbook in hand, watching the maple leaves blaze in red and gold. Nathan joined me, carrying 2 mugs of cider. We sat side by side, not speaking, just listening to the distant hum of insects and the soft creak of the old porch. In that quiet moment, I realized how much I needed this: the grounded calm of country life, the steady support of family, and the space to let my creativity unfold. Some nights, I still miss the buzz of the city, the late-night coffee shops, the neon glow of street art, the endless hum of possibility. But here, under a sky unpolluted by skyscrapers or streetlights, I've discovered a different kind of magic. I've learned that home isn't just a place. It's the people who believe in you, even when you're unsure of yourself. It's the small rituals that become anchors in turbulent times. It's the chance to lay down roots, or to bring your own roots and watch them grow stronger in new soil. I'm still me, Ava, the art student with more ideas than time, with a past that taught me the fragility of certainty. But today, I'm also the niece who found refuge in her uncle's humble farmhouse, the friend who bakes pies with her aunt on Sunday afternoons, the artist who sketches the whisper of wind through the cornfields. And as I prepare for my next freelance project, I know that this chapter, though unplanned, is shaping me in ways I never could have drawn on my own. Ava's heart thundered in her chest as every sensation around her sharpened into a single moment of unspoken urgency. The soft glow of the lamp painted his features in gentle light, his eyelashes resting against cheekbones she had only ever admired from afar. She felt as though time itself had slowed, drawing her inexorably toward him. With each breath, the space between them grew impossibly small, and all the doubts she'd carried melted away in the warmth of his gaze. Her lips trembled as she closed the final inches that separated them. At first, their kiss was tentative, a whisper of contact that sent ripples through her entire being. Then Nathan's hand came up to cradle her face, his thumb brushing lightly across her skin as though he were memorizing its every curve. The world beyond the walls of that room faded to a soft blur, leaving only the two of them suspended in a shared, breathtaking instant. Conflict flickered through Ava's mind, questions of right and reason, but her body spoke its own language, drawing her closer, compelling her to stay. When they broke apart for air, their foreheads rested together, breaths mingling in a quiet symphony of racing hearts. Ava felt the steady rise and fall of Nathan's chest beneath her palm, and in that simple touch she discovered a fierce clarity. He looked at her with eyes wide and earnest, his voice low and gentle as he whispered, "Are you certain?" The words trembled between them like a fragile promise. Ava closed her eyes, searching her own heart. All the hesitation she'd known dissolved in the echo of his concern. "I am," she breathed, "more than anything." Their next kiss was different, full of resolve, unburdened by doubt. It carried the weight of all they'd kept hidden, the longing, the fear, the hope, and transformed it into something luminous. Nathan's hand slid around her waist, anchoring her to this moment, and she felt a fierce joy ignite within her. Every sound, the soft hum of the night beyond the window, the distant rustle of leaves, seemed to celebrate their union. In that cocoon of light and shadow, Ava understood that some connections defy logic, that the heart has its own reasons, and that, in sharing this breathless closeness, they had found a truth more profound than any spoken word. That evening, the house felt unusually still. After dinner, I retreated to my little studio room at the end of the hallway, intent on finishing a poster design for a freelance client. The only light came from my desk lamp, casting a warm glow over my sketches. Outside, the cicadas droned in the dark, familiar, comforting background noise, and then I heard soft footsteps on the wooden floorboards. Uncle Nathan's bedroom door creaked open. My heart thudded, not with excitement, but with concern. He'd mentioned feeling under the weather all day. I assumed he was resting. For a moment, I hesitated, wondering if I should leave him be. But something tugged at me, an instinctive need to check that he was all right. I slipped out of my room and tiptoed down the corridor. Inside his room, he lay on the bed, propped up by pillows, staring at the ceiling. His hair was tousled, and there were faint shadows under his eyes that I'd never noticed before. The gentle moonlight filtering through the curtains painted silver patterns on the quilt, and for an instant, he looked smaller than I'd ever seen him. My throat tightened. This was the man who had always been my rock, and here he was, vulnerable and alone. I cleared my throat softly, and he turned to me with a weak smile. "Hey, Ava," he whispered. His voice, usually so steady, wavered like a tired traveler. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to worry you." His hand lay limply on the bedspread, and I knelt beside him, placing my hand over his. "It's okay," I murmured. "You've done so much for me. Let me take care of you tonight." I fetched a glass of water and sat with him as he sipped it, asking gentle questions about his headache, offering to find a hot compress. In the hush of the room, our roles quietly reversed. He, the protector, and I, his attentive supporter. As I smoothed back the hair from his forehead, I realized how much he had sacrificed so that I could have a stable home. Every patient lesson he'd given me, to ride my bike, to believe in my art, now echoed back in this moment of tender care. When he finally closed his eyes and drifted towards sleep, I stayed beside him until his breathing became even. With a soft kiss on his forehead, I stood, my heart full of gratitude and love that needed no words. In that small moonlit room, I understood that family was not just about blood, but about the quiet acts of devotion that bind us together. Acts we sometimes only recognize in the softest of moments. That evening, the air in Nathan's room felt charged with an intensity I had never experienced before. Every small movement, every glance, every tremor of emotion sounded like a drumbeat in my chest. I realized with a start how deeply I'd come to rely on him, not just as my uncle, but as the one steady presence in my life when everything else felt unstable. We sat on the edge of the bed in silence, our hands still entwined, each of us lost in our own whirlwind of thoughts. His fingers felt strong and reassuring around mine, and for a moment I let myself believe that nothing in the world could touch us. No mistakes, no outside pressures. His familiar scent, the warmth radiating from his skin, was comforting and yet disorienting, as if I had crossed some invisible line and couldn't find my way back. Then the front door downstairs clicked, and in an instant the spell broke. My heart slammed against my ribs as I yanked my hand free, stumbling backward as panic washed over me. Nathan's eyes followed me, wide and silent. I could see the same shock mirrored in his face. We both knew that whatever had passed between us was impossible to explain, and unacceptable in every sense. Footsteps thundered up the staircase. My pulse raced so loudly that I was sure the person on the other side of the door would hear it. I tried to speak, tried to form a single coherent word, but my throat felt as if it had closed up entirely. The door creaked open, and there she was. Victoria stood framed in the doorway, shoulders tense, her eyes narrowing as they flicked from me to Nathan. In the bright hallway light, everything looked stark, too vivid and raw. "Ava! Nathan! What's going on?" Her voice trembled, halfway between confusion and fear. I glanced back at Nathan, desperate for him to find some excuse or explanation, but all I saw was regret in his eyes. The silence stretched unbearably. Victoria's gaze softened and then hardened in quick succession, as though she was trying to shake off a sudden premonition. I swallowed hard, the knot in my stomach tightening so much that I thought I might cry. I'm so sorry," I finally choked out, my voice small and broken. "I didn't mean for any of this to happen." I sank to the floor, overwhelmed by shame and sorrow. Victoria took a hesitant step forward. "Ava, come here." Her tone was gentle now, but carried an undercurrent of steel. I looked up, tears prickling at the corners of my eyes. Nathan reached out, as if to soothe me, but hesitated when Victoria's gaze landed on his hand. "I need to understand," she whispered, voice wavering. "Is everything all right? Are you both okay?" Behind her concern, I sensed her fear that the foundation of her family life was crumbling. Nathan rose and moved to stand beside Victoria, careful to keep a respectful distance from me. He placed a hand on her shoulder, steadying both of us. "Victoria, he exhaled, gathering his resolve. "We were talking, and—" His voice caught. I lost track of how close things got. It was my fault. I should have set better boundaries. Victoria's eyes filled with tears, and she pressed her hand to her heart. "We'll talk about this," she said softly, turning to me. "Later, Ava. For now, please go to your room." I nodded numbly, gathering my courage. As I rose and slipped past them in the hallway, I could feel both their gazes on my back. Protective, concerned, and perhaps a little wounded. Once inside my room, I closed the door quietly and leaned against it, shaking. A swirl of emotions, relief, regret, confusion, gratitude, pressed in on me all at once. I realized how much Nathan had come to mean to me, how deeply I valued his guidance and care. But I also understood now that some lines, no matter how blurred in a moment of vulnerability, must never be crossed. Family is about trust and safety, and I had put that in jeopardy. That night, I lay awake listening to the distant hum of crickets, replaying the evening over and over. I knew conversations were coming. Honest, difficult conversations, both with Victoria and with Nathan. I also knew that our little household would endure this trial, because we all cared too deeply for each other to let one mistake destroy the bonds we'd built. And so, with tears finally spent, I allowed myself to envision tomorrow, a morning of apologies, of setting clearer boundaries, and of reaffirming what truly mattered, our family's love and respect for one another. In that calm promise of a new day, I found a fragile hope that we could heal together, stronger and more understanding. I stammered, unsure of what to say. The words sat like stones in my throat. Nathan, now sitting on the edge of the bed, looked just as lost. His hand moved slowly to the back of his neck, rubbing it with a nervous energy that betrayed his embarrassment. He couldn't look at me, and I didn't know if I could face him either. Victoria's gaze moved between the two of us. There was something unsettling in her eyes, not fury or accusation, but a heavy, weary sadness. An unspoken understanding passed between us like a shadow falling across the floor. She saw it. She knew something had happened, something that shouldn't have, but her reaction wasn't what I expected. She stepped inside, her movements slow and deliberate. With a quiet click, she closed the door behind her. The sound was small, but final. The tension in the room thickened, suspended like dust in still air. The silence felt like the calm before a storm. "Ava," she said softly, her voice more fragile than I'd ever heard it, "you need to understand something." Her gaze didn't waver. "There's more to this than you realize. More than either of you understand right now." Her words struck me like a wave I couldn't brace against. What did she mean? What more could there be? Confusion bloomed in my chest, spreading like fire through dry grass. Nathan's shoulders tensed beside me. Then, without another word, Victoria turned and stepped out of the room. She didn't slam the door. She didn't yell. But the weight of what she left behind settled heavily in the space around us. Even in her sorrow, Victoria hadn't cast me away. That alone gave me something I hadn't expected. Hope. It was fragile and uncertain, but it was hope nonetheless. She'd seen something and chose compassion instead of fury. She chose understanding. I turned to Nathan, his face pale, his hands rubbing nervously together. He looked completely unraveled, caught between guilt, regret, and something deeper I couldn't quite name. He was avoiding my eyes. He felt it all. The collision of our worlds, the moment that had spiraled so far beyond what either of us ever anticipated. But there was no denying it anymore. Victoria was right. We couldn't go back. We couldn't pretend nothing happened. We had to face it. "Nathan," I whispered. My voice trembled, uncertain but resolute. "What do we do now?" He looked up slowly, his eyes rimmed with pain. "I don't know, Ava. I really don't," he said, voice cracking under the weight of everything we were both feeling. "I don't know what to feel, or what I'm allowed to feel. I don't know if I should be ashamed or angry, or just heartbroken." His honesty stung, not because it was cruel, but because it was raw. True. Nathan was torn, between what we had shared and his loyalty to Victoria, his wife, my aunt. Nothing about this was easy or simple. It couldn't be solved in one conversation. It would take honesty, vulnerability, and time. I moved closer, each step slow and careful, unsure of whether I should comfort him, or even if he'd want me to. I hesitated, heart pounding. Nothing about this felt clear anymore. Everything I once thought I knew about right and wrong felt blurred, tangled in emotion. "I don't think we can figure this all out right now," I said softly, sitting beside him. "But I think we need to be honest with each other, because this, what happened, what we felt, it's too big to ignore." Nathan nodded slowly. His eyes, still glistening with emotion, met mine for the first time since Victoria left. "Yeah," he whispered. "You're right. I don't even know where to begin." I reached out and gently took his hand in mine. It was a simple gesture, one of care, not confusion. The warmth of it reminded me that despite everything, we were still just people trying to make sense of something we never meant to happen. "We start," I said quietly, "by admitting what happened, what we felt, what we still feel. We face it, together." He looked at me, really looked at me, and nodded again. "Together," he repeated like a promise. Not a promise of love, not even of resolution, but of truth. Of not running from what we needed to face. Outside the room, the house was still. The world hadn't stopped, but inside that quiet space, it felt like a new beginning. A fragile, necessary reckoning. There were no easy answers, only honesty, healing, and the long road ahead. "Feel," I whispered, holding his gaze. "And then we figure out what comes next." Nathan nodded again, slower this time. The tension in his features eased, just a fraction. But it was enough. Something unspoken passed between us, an acknowledgement of all that was broken and all that might still be repaired. "It's not going to be easy, Ava," he said, his voice barely audible. "But I want to understand. I need to. Whatever this is, whatever we're feeling, I can't pretend it doesn't matter." I reached out, gently squeezing his hand. The contact was steady, warm, and filled with unspoken emotions that ran deeper than either of us could fully name. It wasn't romantic, it wasn't simple, but it was real. "I don't have all the answers," I admitted, my voice trembling with honesty. "I don't know what happens next, but I'm not running from this, not anymore." We sat in silence after that, two souls caught in the middle of something too complex to name. Outside, the world carried on as if nothing had changed. But in that room, everything had. There was no easy way forward, no clean path, just a tangled mess of emotions, regrets, and quiet hope. My thoughts kept drifting back to Victoria. Her voice, so calm. Her expression, unreadable but not cold. She hadn't raised her voice. She hadn't lashed out. Instead, she'd spoken with a grace I hadn't expected, offering us a lifeline we didn't know we needed. In that moment, her words had pierced through the chaos like sunlight filtering through storm clouds. She had seen what happened. She knew. And somehow, she still chose compassion. It didn't make sense, but maybe it didn't have to. Victoria had offered us something rare, a space to breathe, to think, to feel. She hadn't given answers, only a door we were now free to walk through. Whether that door led to healing or more heartbreak, I couldn't say. But the chance itself felt like a beginning. I glanced at Nathan again. His gaze was lowered, fixed on the floor, but his hand was still in mine, and that meant something. Even if the world around us changed, even if everything fell apart, in that quiet moment, we were still choosing to face it together. For the first time, I truly believed that no matter what came next, we could find our way through it. There would be pain, there would be hard conversations, there would be moments when the weight of it all felt too much to carry, but there was also hope. Hope that what had shaken us might someday make us stronger. Hope that the bond we couldn't explain might, in time, become something we could live with, or even learn from. I leaned back slowly, letting out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. My thoughts raced with questions, with doubt, with aching uncertainty. But beneath it all was a quiet resolve. Maybe we didn't need all the answers yet. Maybe all we needed was this, an understanding that we didn't have to run, and we didn't have to carry it alone. Beside me, Nathan shifted slightly, his voice barely above a whisper. "Do you think we'll be okay?" I paused, then answered truthfully. "I don't know, but I think we have a chance, and right now, that's enough." Outside the room, the sky was beginning to dim. Shadows stretched across the floor, long and soft, as if time itself were slowing to let us catch up. It felt like the end of something, but also the fragile beginning of something else. We both knew that nothing would ever be the same again. There was no going back. But maybe, just maybe, there was still a way forward. Hand in hand, In quiet uncertainty, we sat in the stillness, and somehow, together, we would figure it out. The sun had barely risen, casting a soft amber light across the kitchen. I sat at the small wooden table, my hands wrapped around a cup of tea I hadn't touched. The silence in the house was different this morning, less tense, but thick with everything unsaid. I heard footsteps before I saw her. Slow, steady, deliberate. Victoria stepped into the kitchen, her robe loosely tied at the waist, her hair slightly tousled from sleep. Her eyes met mine briefly, then drifted to the kettle. "I thought you'd still be sleeping," she said quietly, reaching into the cupboard for a cup. "I couldn't," I admitted, my voice low. "Too much in my head." She nodded, pouring herself some tea, then sat across from me. We sat like that for a long moment, two women sharing the same space, but caught in vastly different emotions. I wasn't sure who was supposed to speak first, but I knew it had to be me. "Victoria," I said softly, the words sticking in my throat. "I'm sorry for everything." She didn't look up right away. Instead, she stirred her tea with a slow, measured motion. "I know," she replied simply. "I never meant to hurt you," I continued. "I didn't even know how we got here, but you did get here," she finished, her voice calm but edged with something more fragile. I nodded, shame rising in my chest like a tide I couldn't stop. "Yes, and I can't change that. I can only face it." Victoria sighed. She set her spoon down and finally looked at me. Her eyes weren't cold, they weren't angry, but they were tired, worn from the weight of so much unsaid pain. "I spent most of last night trying to decide what to feel," she said. "Anger, betrayal, disgust, and for a while I felt all of it, but mostly Ava. I just felt grief." Her words struck me harder than any accusation would have. "I'm not angry because of a broken rule," she continued. "I'm heartbroken because I watched two people I care about fall into something that could destroy them both, and I don't know how to stop it." Tears welled in my eyes, but I didn't look away. I owed her that much. "I never wanted this," I whispered. "I didn't plan for it. I didn't even understand it until it was too late." "I believe you," Victoria said gently, "but intention doesn't always erase the impact." Silence fell again, thick and uneasy. I didn't know how to fix it. I didn't even know if it could be fixed. "Why didn't you get angry?" I finally asked, my voice fragile. "Why didn't you yell or tell me to leave?" She was quiet for a long moment before answering. "Because I've lived long enough to know that anger doesn't always heal. Sometimes it just adds more damage. And you're already hurting. So is he. What good would my rage do?" "But I hurt you," I whispered. "I don't deserve your kindness." Victoria leaned back, her fingers tapping lightly against her cup. "Kindness doesn't always come from what someone deserves. Sometimes it comes from what they need." She took a slow sip, then looked at me with a softer gaze. "I know you're not a bad person, Ava, and I know Nathan isn't either, but what happened, what you let happen, can't be swept aside. It needs to be understood, faced." "I'm trying," I said, tears slipping down my cheeks. "I want to make it right." Victoria reached across the table and gently placed her hand over mine. Her touch was light but grounding. "I don't know what right looks like yet," she said, "but I believe in healing. For you, for Nathan, even for me. But it starts with honesty." I nodded, emotion choking my voice. "Thank you. For not giving up on us. For not giving up on me." "I haven't," she said. "But I need you to promise something, Ava. Anything. No more secrets," she said. "If this is something you truly care about, whatever it becomes, you need to walk through it with your eyes open. And with truth, even when it hurts." I swallowed hard and gave a trembling nod. "I promise." Victoria gave me a faint, bitter-sweet smile. "Then we take it one step at a time." The morning light grew brighter around us. The world outside kept moving, unaware of the fragile, heavy truth being shared in that little kitchen. And yet, somewhere in the pain, there was a sense of release, of beginning. We had a long road ahead, wounds to heal, trust to rebuild. But maybe, just maybe, we had taken the first step.